Knowledge organizations' learning strategies to develop agile core competencies. Nokia and Apple. NASA and SpaceX. Blockbuster and Netflix. What is the core difference between these companies? Fundamentally, it is their difference in core competencies. Nokia is focused on just a phone. Apple is focused on a device capable of multiple functions and innovating numerous industries. NASA is focused on the single use of rockets that would cost millions to launch each time. SpaceX is focused on the reusability of rockets, which would reduce the cost of launching rockets. Blockbuster was focused on brick and mortar. Netflix is focused on e-commerce, spanning the world with limitless opportunities. Companies such as Nokia, NASA, and Blockbuster are static, focused on obsolete views and developing on the past. Companies such as Apple, SpaceX, and Netflix are agile, focused on both incremental and radical innovation. Along the spectrum of static core competencies and agile core competencies, where are you? This video is going to be a representation of a study that explores how companies can survive in a dynamic, fast-changing business environment. Continuous learning and knowledge creation are the primary new tools to survive in such an economy. In the resource-based economy, companies traditionally focus solely on the internal organizational structure. In the knowledge-based economy, companies need to consider both their internal and external environment. This is the new interconnected business model. This new model is a model that will help leaders to understand the complexity of the external environment and allow them to rethink or reevaluate the internal processes to create agile core competencies and sustain their competitive advantage. Next, we will explore what each component of this model represents more in depth. Any company operates with two contexts, external and internal. The external environment itself is a knowledge-based economy. It is the economy where knowledge is at the core of all economic growth and the primary source of revenue. A knowledge-based economy is an economy that depends on the innovation mindset, competencies, and capabilities of its employees to produce goods and services. Today, companies operate in a dynamic, complex, and fast-changing business knowledge-based economy. By understanding and identifying the changes in the external environment, leaders can evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of their internal environment and learning strategies. That is the external context that both shapes and is shaped by the internal context leaders. The internal context consists of learning strategies, which are actually made up of three categories: leadership, learning, and knowledge. Learning consists of learning organization culture and organizational learning processes. Knowledge consists of knowledge creation and knowledge management. Together with leadership, they form the entire basis of learning strategies. To understand learning strategies as a whole, we must understand what each element stands for. So what does leadership mean in learning strategies? In learning organizations, leaders must be adaptive, communicative, and flexible to help employees respond to the unpredictability of the business environment. Accordingly, Sang argued that leaders need to become designers, stewards, and teachers to support a continuous learning culture. Each organization has its own culture, which influences learning. Organizational culture is formed by the principles and assumptions held by leaders and employees who facilitate shared meaning and guide behavior and performance within the organization. A learning organization culture is where continuous learning, knowledge sharing, and teamwork performance takes place. Usually, organization processes follow a learning process. Traditionally, there are three types of learning processes: adaptive, generative, and triple loop learning. Adaptive single-loop learning is a sequential process focused on detecting and correcting errors according to organizational procedures. Adaptive learning is a useful process for fixing a problem, but not for changing behaviors or altering assumptions within the organization. Generative double-loop learning is a process to examine organizations' cultures, assumptions, and values in order to find new ways of preventing errors before they materialize. Generative learning is a continuous process of behavioral changes within a learning organization to sustain its competitive advantages. Unfortunately, these two processes are fundamentally flawed and obsolete because they rely on building upon that which exists. This type of adaptive learning is incremental, but in order to have a presence in the market, you have to be different. To be different, you need to change. Change is disruptive. Triple loop learning is a process of learning where organizations teach their employees how to learn continuously so that they can effectively understand and respond to unknown problems and situations. Triple loop learning relies on the employee in becoming a knowledge worker. A knowledge worker is defined as an employee who is proficient in continuously learning to generate and share new knowledge. Continuous learning is a conductive process of developing new skills through knowledge acquisitions and sharing. A knowledge worker is one that is engaged with the unknowns of the external market, using such information to self-direct their own learning to formulate newly gained knowledge. Knowledge workers follow untraditional processes to solve problems and think creatively to innovate new products in response to the external environment. Knowledge creation is the constant process of shifting employees' tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge, producing organizational knowledge. Tacit knowledge is subjective and only exists in employees' minds and has its roots in personal knowledge, intuitions, and insight. Tacit knowledge is enhanced by continuous learning, social networking, and employee communication. When employees share their personal knowledge, experience, and insights, they create explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge can be shared through databases, spreadsheets, emails, and is quickly processed by a machine. Employees, teams, and organizations produce organizational knowledge by socializing, externalizing, combining, and finally internalizing their tacit knowledge. Consequently, Nonaka and Takeuchi established the SECI model of creating and transferring knowledge. Knowledge management is a set of processes creating, acquiring, sharing, and protecting organizations' distinctive knowledge. Knowledge management processes help leaders create a dynamic and continuous learning environment to sustain a competitive environment. In the past, businesses saw leadership, learning, and knowledge as individual components. However, today these components should be integrated together as learning strategies in order to allow the knowledge worker to develop agile core competencies to sustain a competitive advantage. These learning strategies drive the learning path for individual knowledge workers in order to develop agile core competencies. A learning path is like a training package for a set of skills, consisting of micro steps of learning that can be changed and adapted along the way. A learning path consists of a sequence of courses or activities that allows a knowledge worker to master a subject by accumulating micro skills. These activities can stem from a variety of sources, including videos, texts, discussions, and a lot more. Additionally, the combined uses of learning path, artificial intelligence, and immersive technology will enhance the organizational learning processes. A curious knowledge worker who is willing and capable of questioning the status quo will help the organization move from static core competencies to agile core competencies. Today, the ultimate goal for businesses is to identify their core competencies and to shift them into agile core competencies. Through their knowledge workforce and learning strategies, businesses can change. Along the spectrum of static core competencies and agile core competencies, where are you?